Hi, I'm Beth Ruyak, and welcome to this post-telecourse on missing persons investigations. Missing persons cases can be among the most challenging assignments law enforcement has to investigate. In this program, our coverage of the topic will start with the acceptance of initial calls regarding missing persons and how to properly enter a detailed initial report. We'll discuss initial response and how to evaluate a missing persons case in order to better apply resources to the investigation. We will then look at some of the different categories of missing adults and children and demonstrate how a missing persons category may determine how law enforcement proceeds with an investigation. We'll also look into how to properly obtain dental, skeletal, medical, and DNA evidence using Department of Justice release forms. We will then discuss the importance of using resources, tools, and outside agencies to help in the success of a missing persons investigation. And finally, there's a brief section on case closure and some final thoughts on missing persons investigations. The information the initial call taker receives from a reporting party regarding a missing person needs to be as detailed as possible for writing up the initial report. Remember that when communicating with the reporting parties and family members of missing persons, law enforcement should show sensitivity to the feelings of helplessness and anxiety that these loved ones often experience. Doing this while acting in a swift, organized, and efficient manner will help you in investigating your missing persons cases.
River City PD, Dispatcher 77.
Hi. Yeah, my name is Jonathan McCarthy. My father, he's missing.
Okay.
He went down to the cafe about 3.5 hours ago.
What is your father's name?
His name is Robert McCarthy. He's 75. He's been missing for about...
Okay, what address are you calling from?
1234 Main Street.
Is this the address that he resides at?
Yes, I'm here right now.
Okay. And what is your name?
My name is Jonathan McCarthy.
McCarthy, what is the phone number?
619-746-6296.
Okay, and when was the last time you saw your father?
He went down to the cafe about 3.5 hours ago. I haven't seen him since...
What is your father's description?
He's 5'6". He has gray hair. He's balding. He's 75 years old.
And do you know what he was wearing?
Ma'am, he was wearing khaki pants. He had on a khaki sweater vest. He wears glasses. He always wears a blue hat.
Does he have any type of medical condition or take any kind of medication?
He has a heart condition. He has dementia.
Is he taking medication?
Yes,
okay.
He takes medication. He just gets very confused, and I think that's what's happening right now.
Okay.
He's never not taken his heart medication, and when he's not taking his dementia medication, he just gets very confused, and I think that's what's happening right now.
Okay, I need you to stand by at that location.
Can you just send somebody out?
Yes, just wait there until the officer responds out
Will he
to
come
you,
soon?
okay? I need you to stand by there because your father may return home, and we need you to stay there.
You want me to stay and wait for the deputy?
Okay.
Fine.
All right,
Okay.
Thank you. Bye.
When the initial reporting party calls in, you get the call. You want to enter the basic information, the name of the reporting party, the address, the phone number, all the basic information, age, description, everything like that. Once you gather that information and determine that the reporting party feels that this person is missing, you send that call to the radio. The radio can then dispatch it to the officer, and while that officer is en route, or the call is being dispatched, you can get the more pertinent information and get into detail about why this person is missing or why they think this person is missing.
If you look at the situations with missing persons, 90 to 95% of them turn out okay. But you have to realize in the forefront of your mind that other 5-10% are dependent on you making right calls and recognizing when to make that call. If you do everything right, your department's going to come out on top.
California law requires local law enforcement agencies to prioritize missing persons cases over those cases involving crimes involving property. This is a clear signal from the legislature that there is a priority to missing persons cases.
Law enforcement needs to understand how important missing persons investigations are. The reporting parties are usually family members reporting their loved ones missing. It's imperative that law enforcement take it serious, use all the resources that they possibly can to give a safe return to this missing person and the family's loved ones.
You never want to tell them that you know what they're going through, because you don't. And you just want to tell them that we're here for them, we're going to do the best that we can, and the officer is on the way to help them out. And doing that and being able to calm the reporting party and give them that reassurance that something is going to be done, that something is going to happen, really helps them to get together and to be able to be strong in that type of situation.
Oh, there are several risk factors involved in missing persons, and the first thing that they need to find out is if there is any suspicious circumstances, possibly foul play. What is the age of the missing person? Do they have any mental or medical problems that would cause them to be a high-risk person? Have they ever been reported missing before? Do they have a prior history of it, or is this the first time they've ever been reported missing? And is it a child abduction kind of case, a familial abduction kind of case? Those are the kind of things that the dispatcher or initial call taker should try and verify.
So it's very important that the officer get to the scene, do his investigation fully, so that he can determine whether the person is actually missing, if the person is missing at risk, whether there's certain circumstances involved, and he can also determine things that weren't given to us on the phone.
In reality, they are the initial investigator. They make the initial assessment, and if they blow that, no matter how good you do the case afterwards, the impression that's left in that reporting party's mind will stay forever, especially if it's one of those 5 to 10% that go bad. In other words, we don't control the outcome in a lot of senses, what happens to these MPs, but in the case if it is that one that goes bad, you will be judged on your initial actions in the first few minutes, hours, and days of the investigation. And it all starts with that dispatcher.
If a parent or a reporting party were to contact the California Highway Patrol directly to report an abducted child, we would have to refer them to the local agency. The local agency would then have to activate the emergency alert system within their jurisdiction. And if that alert needs to be broadened to a multi-regional or statewide alert, the agency would then call the Highway Patrol's NTAC to have that alert broadened either multi-regionally or statewide.
When it comes to BOLs, when the initial officer gets to the scene and he does his investigation, when that investigation is complete and he has gathered all of his information, he will then forward that information back to the dispatch center and tell us what we need to do with that information, whether it's giving a BOL out to the surrounding agencies or to the rest of the community.
Penal Code Section 14210A stipulates that it is the duty of all law enforcement agencies to immediately assist any person who is attempting to make a report of a missing person or runaway. Section 14205A requires that a report shall be accepted regardless of jurisdiction. PC 14205A also states that if someone wishing to report a missing person contacts the California Highway Patrol, including by phone, the CHP may take the report. After taking the report, the CHP shall immediately advise the reporting party of the name and phone number of the police or sheriff's department having jurisdiction over the missing person's residence and the place where the missing person was last seen. Section 14205 also requires that dispatchers, officers, or other designated personnel shall give priority to the handling of missing persons, including runaways, over reports relating to crimes involving property. And Section 14205C requires that in cases where the initial missing person report is taken by a department other than the city or county of residence of the missing person, the department taking the report shall, without delay, notify and forward a copy of the report to the police or sheriff's departments having residential jurisdiction and to the departments where the person was last seen. Often, when responding to a report of a missing person, the reason for an individual's disappearance is unknown. Determining the category of a missing person may help further your investigation and determine what resources you may need to call upon to assist in the investigation. The 9 categories of missing persons currently referenced in the Department of Justice's missing persons system include runaway, stranger abduction, lost, suspicious circumstances, parent-family abduction, dependent adult, voluntary missing adult, unknown missing, and catastrophic missing. It's important to gather all the evidence you can during your initial contact with the reporting party. If you don't do a complete initial investigation, it's possible that you may miss critical information and important evidence that might be a key component to the quick and safe recovery of the missing person.
Well, you never really know what you're going into initially. Majority of abduction cases or cases that have ended up in death have resulted from an initial report of a missing persons case. So you just never really know what you're going into.
If you take, for instance, the Lacey Peterson case, the officers showed up. Now, we have a grown woman who's completely capable of going shopping and staying late, completely capable of deciding, you know what, I want to go to Las Vegas for a day and do that. But when those officers showed up and they started questioning Scott Peterson, there were things that didn't add up right away, and their officer intuition kicked in. And if it weren't for the things that they did on that initial dispatch, there's a very good chance that a Scott Peterson conviction might not have occurred. So when those officers show up and they're filling out that initial form, there's things that are very important, because that one missing that could be the missing person case for them that actually turned out to be a homicide.
When initially taking a missing persons report, it's imperative that the officer gather as much information about the missing person as possible. We call that victimology. The description of the person, what they were last seen wearing, perhaps their medical conditions and medications or corrective wear that they may need, in addition to their daily routines and what their patterns are throughout the day. Perhaps what mode of transportation that they take, if they have a vehicle, if they take public transportation, or if they usually carry cash or use credit cards. Just anything specific about that missing person that may be important to the investigation.
We've all had to back up and recontact witnesses in order to obtain information that we could have easily gotten during our first interview. And we all know what a problem that can be, finding the witness, re-interviewing the witnesses. And if our initial contact with the missing person's family can allow us to obtain all of the information we would need, we're best serving that missing person's case.
We also want to obtain personal items, clothing, toothbrushes, hairbrushes, bedding, that type of thing, phone books, a list of friends or relatives, business acquaintances that that person has regular contact with.
An important part of a missing person investigation is obtaining a photo. If the reporting party or the family member doesn't have a photo to provide to you, law enforcement has access to CalPhoto. In CalPhoto, you can get driver's license photos and booking photos if there's some on file. You can utilize these photos to put into flyers for your missing person.
As a detective or even a first responder, a first patrol officer arriving on scene of a missing persons call, it's very important, once again, to keep an open mind. When you walk into the home, let the scene speak to you. Don't make prejudgments based upon the call or outside factors. And the scene will speak to you in occasions.
When an officer arrives on the scene of a missing persons report, it's vital that they seize the opportunity to thoroughly search the last known point, whether it be a residence or yard or what have you. Oftentimes family members who have in fact searched for their loved ones already are full of emotion and anger and anxiety, and they believe that officers should be out in other areas looking for their loved one when the officer has in fact not even checked the last known point where the subject may be. And there have been hundreds of horror stories within the state of California where these searches have not occurred and the subjects are in fact there. Officers need to take the time with their trained investigative eye to look at the last known point, look at where the subjects were known to be, and conduct a thorough search before expanding outward.
When an officer responds to take a missing persons report, it's that officer's responsibility to assess the situation and the circumstances. It will be that officer that places that missing persons classification into NCIC. Depending on how this missing persons case is classified will depend on the resources and the sense of urgency in proceeding with the investigation on this missing person.
First thing you want to do is do a walkthrough of the house. And while you're doing the walkthrough, observe what you're seeing in regards to the family members, the reporting party, witnesses, how they're acting. Is it normal, not normal? What do you see in the residence? Is there a hole punched in the wall of a chronic runaway's bedroom and maybe blood? Has there been an altercation? Go with an open attitude that the missing person is an unknown status, at risk, until you can articulate why or why not that's the case, and just be open and objective.
You're going to need resources, and to get those resources, you really need to advise your supervisor, your sergeant, so they should be called to the scene as soon as you know that you're going to need more than just you to accomplish what it is you're going to need to do.
And if you have to change the status of that person, don't be afraid to upgrade your BOLs. Don't be afraid to update the MUPS entry to reflect what you're investigating.
The initial responding officer and or the investigator that shows up on the scene very typically will have a checklist in hand. And the purpose for this is that when you arrive on these scenes, they can be very chaotic depending on the circumstances. And you don't really have the time to sit there and try to go through your memory bank, try to remember what needs to be done or things that have been covered. With this checklist in front of you, you can mark those off and identify that these things have happened or these are areas that you need to start looking into. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children provide checklists along with the FBI. There's a number of organizations and also individual departments develop checklists for their initial responders and investigators.
We get them entered in MUPS before the officer clears the scene. So right there at the home, he calls in and gets them entered into MUPS. And other agencies may vary, but consider doing this right at the scene. There's several reasons for this. It assures that you're in compliance. It gets in because the person that makes an entry gets what's called a FCN number, a file control number, and you can attach that directly to your report to indicate that that has been done, and people can refer and know that it was done. Secondly, what it does, at the time you report it in, this is a powerful tool you can use with the family. You can tell them, what I've just done is entered your missing loved one into CLETS, the California Law Enforcement Telecommunications System, and NCIC, the national system, and explain to them that as of this moment, any officer in the United States that comes in contact with your loved one has immediate access to the fact that they're missing and who to contact, and it refers directly to my report. And that's powerful. So now they see not just one guy writing a report, you took the time to explain to them, and now they can envision a whole law enforcement community working to find their loved one.
It's extremely important to remember that the person that is reporting their loved one missing, they think something horrible has happened to them. And you have to actually kind of put yourself in their situation. How would you feel if your mother or your father or your brother or your aunt or your spouse wasn't where they were supposed to be anymore? And keeping that in mind, you still need to obtain very vital information.
Obviously, part of our job is to be professional and try to put these people at ease, try to give them a sense of hope. But it's also even more critical when you're dealing with factors such as DNA collection or fingerprints, which might tend to indicate to the person you're intimating that their loved one may no longer be alive. One way to get around that is to try to concentrate on the fact that you're not necessarily gathering this to identify a dead body. This is, number one, a routine portion of any good investigation. And you can also emphasize the fact that this can be used to identify someone who may not be able to identify themselves. We've had cases where a person was injured in some way, was in a hospital for over a month, and no one knew because they had no idea what this person's identity was.
Once the missing persons system was implemented in 1992, it provided a way of getting missing persons data to the Department of Justice instantly. There was a corresponding change in the legislation which mandated reporting of missing persons, especially missing children, within very specific shorter time frames to the Department of Justice.
The agencies are expected to work together in their investigation, whatever's appropriate to do on their end with respect to where this missing person may be, and they collectively work together. The area of jurisdiction of investigation is the last known residence.
And there are many different tools that we bring to assist you in a missing person investigation. One of the most sought after is the pen register, trap and trace, and the cell site, and also going up on a wiretap on individual phones. And in particular, the cell sites are extremely important in your missing person investigations, and quite often that is the main thing we're asked to do. We're able to initially obtain the cell site information to determine where the cell site is at that location, and also important in the investigation is to find out historical cell site information, and that is something we can provide to your agency during a missing persons report. Some of the other resources the FBI can provide is the evidence response team. These are specially trained agents that are trained to do crime scene investigation. They will collect the evidence, process the evidence, and also forward it to the FBI laboratory. The FBI laboratory is another resource for the local agencies to utilize. It is one of the premier laboratories in the nation and is a resource that they can use during any missing person investigation. Some of the other additional resources that are available are the case management system. During a missing person investigation, a lot of times the agencies are overwhelmed with leads. And in order to manage a missing person investigation, you need some kind of case management. If your agency does not have a case management system, we can provide the case management for you, and we can also provide the case management personnel to actually operate it. Another resource that the behavioral analysis unit is providing during a missing person investigation is that they can help establish questions. They can help establish questions when you're doing your neighborhood canvass, when you're doing your roadblock questions, and when you're doing your interviews of your subjects and your witnesses. They can give you strategies on how to interview your subjects and your witnesses.
If our initial investigation is comprehensive enough, our initial contact is comprehensive, it obtains all the information, is well documented, then we are in a position to be able to help bring that person home. The family deserves it, the missing person deserves it, and our professionalism demands it. So we want to make that first initial investigation count.
It is suggested by the Missing Persons Investigations Advisory Committee that the initial investigation be handled by the agency of jurisdiction where the missing person was last seen. This includes entry in the Department of Justice's Missing Persons System, or MEPS, and coordination of a bilateral investigation with the agency of the missing person's residence. Once this agency has exhausted all investigative leads, it should then transfer the case to the agency of the missing person's residence. Any future investigative leads should be coordinated through the agency that has jurisdiction over the missing person's resident address. Penal Code Section 14205A requires that the department shall broadcast a Be on the Lookout or BOLO bulletin within its jurisdiction if the person is under 16 years of age or if there is evidence that the missing person is at risk. The BOLO should be broadcast without delay. Section 14205B and 14213 state that information regarding missing persons under the age of 16 years or where there is evidence that the missing person is at risk shall be entered into the DOJ Missing Persons System, or MIPS, within 4 hours by the agency taking the report. Federal law expands the state requirement, amended by Suzanne's Law, and requires that anyone under the age of 21 who is reported missing shall be entered immediately into both the state database and NCIC. It should be noted that it is against federal law to have a policy that delays accepting a missing persons report. In cases involving dependent adults suffering with dementia or Alzheimer's, the missing person will have often gone missing more than one time. The more times a person with dementia goes missing, the more likely he or she will come into harm's way. When investigating missing person cases involving dependent adults who may be suffering with dementia, special attention needs to be taken regarding the physical and mental condition of the missing person. These types of cases are usually considered high risk. It becomes a matter of getting to these high-risk missing persons in time before they injure themselves or others.
How you doing?
Hi, good. I'm Roy Frank with the Sheriff's Department.
I'm Jonathan.
Jonathan, I understand your father's missing.
Yeah, he's been gone for about 3 hours now.
Okay. Where did he go?
He went to the cafe.
Okay.
He usually goes there every morning, gets his coffee and newspaper and talks to everybody. And he's usually only gone for about like an hour.
Okay. Is it unusual for him to be gone this long?
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I called.
Okay. Okay. Your father's name?
Robert McCarthy.
Robert McCarthy. Does he go by Bob, or what
Bob.
does his friends call him?
Yeah, Bob.
Bob. Okay. Does Bob have any medical conditions that I should be aware of?
He's got a heart condition.
Okay.
He needs to take his medication, so he's long overdue for that. He's got dementia.
He does have dementia. Yeah. Okay. Has he had any problems in the past being missing?
No.
This is
that's
the first time?
Yeah.
Okay. One of the things that we've learned in law enforcement that's really important is to conduct a thorough search of the house. Have you searched the house already?
Yeah, front and back. I searched everywhere.
Okay. What I'd like to do is do a second search. I'd like to search the back property in the front yard as well as inside the house, just so we can confirm that he's not in there.
Okay.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, come on.
Thank you. Okay, I'm feeling pretty comfortable that your father's not at the house or in the backyard. I think we conducted a fairly thorough search of the area.
Okay.
One of the things that I'm going to have to do at this point in time is expand the search.
Okay.
And what I would like to do is go ahead and notify some of the local agencies and put out what we call a BOLO. And basically what that is a be on the lookout for your father in the general area. One of the things that I need to get from you that I haven't got is a clothing description.
Okay.
Can you give me that?
He had on khaki pants, a khaki sweater vest, a purplish sort of plaid shirt. He wears glasses. He had on a light blue golfer hat.
Okay. When he goes down to the cafe, which direction does he normally go?
Oh, he just heads right down the street.
Okay. And does he return using the same street?
Yeah.
He does. Okay. When we put out this BOL, what we're going to do is we're going to ask for aerial support to come in. We're also going to ask for citizen volunteers, senior volunteers, community service officers to check the area as well. In addition to that, we're going to go ahead and check the local jails and hospitals to make sure that he's not in a hospital at least. I don't think he's down in a jail.
Yeah.
But we do want to check that just in case.
Okay.
Okay. The other thing that I need to ask you is, does he have a dentist by any chance?
Yeah, you went about like a month and a half ago?
About a month and a half ago.
Yeah.
Do you have his dentist information?
I can get it for you.
Okay, inside the house? Mm-hmm. Okay, so if I need to come back, I can get that from
Absolutely,
you?
yeah.
Okay, very good. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and head on down to the cafe. I'd like you to stay here to answer the phone if somebody does call. If he returns, go ahead and just give our office a call, and then I'll come back.
Okay.
Okay?
All right.
You take care.
Thank you so much.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, well, he came on up and he wandered, he's got that limp, so he came by, he walked over to the paper, bought a paper, came back to the door, and then he just stood there for a minute and kind of looked in, and I thought maybe he forgot something at home, I don't know. But then all of a sudden he goes and he wanders off in that direction, so.
And so he went the direction over here.
Yeah.
What way does he normally leave?
Oh, he goes the other way. He lives in the other direction. So that's why I was a little concerned.
Good boy. Good boy. Good boy.
Bob McCarthy? Bob McCarthy? Are you Bob? Are you Bob, sir? We're the San Diego County Sheriff's Department Rescue here. Sir, we're here to help you, sir. Get you covered up here. Look like you're a little cold, sir. Let me get you covered up here, sir. You cold? Well, we're here to help you, Bob, and we're going to...
With our current population of about 4 million Americans with Alzheimer's disease, we are noticing an increasing trend of wandering, which has always been associated with Alzheimer's. Unfortunately, about 70% of all persons with Alzheimer's disease will wander at least once during the course of their illness. Many will wander multiple times, including some cases where we've documented wanderers going away more than 60 times. As a result of that, missing persons cases that are being reported to law enforcement, persons with Alzheimer's disease, that has continued to rise over the years, and we have no reason to believe that that will not continue to rise exponentially as our population continues to grow.
Some of the things that has to concern law enforcement with regard to older persons, and especially persons with dementia or Alzheimer's, are the fact that they're usually physically frail. They may have medical conditions. They're easily hurt. They're possibly easily confused. They may not be able to or even want to ask for help.
When it comes to elder adults, people with mental disabilities, things like that, you want to know, is there areas that they frequent when they take walks on their own, if they have a bus route that they frequent to go visit friends, relatives, or any type of place that they might go. And then the different types of times that they would go and things that they would do when they get off of that route. That way we know, what areas of town that they might be heading towards. Any type of medications that they might be taking at the time. Is it for cessation of life? Anything that they might need, diabetic medication, heart medication, anything like that. And then also you go into the types of medication that they might be taking for some type of mental disability.
If we do not find these Alzheimer's patients within a timely manner, if we do not respond and recognize this as a critical emergency, most Alzheimer's patients will not be able to return on their own. Many will die in the field based on our response to the severity of the problem.
It's very important when you're dealing with persons with dementia to understand that it's not always that you're going to find them in a very confined area. You can find them miles and miles and miles away from home, whether they're in their car or on foot. And sometimes when you do find them, most of the time when you find them, you won't know how they got to where they got to because they can't remember. They can't remember where they went, and they don't remember how they got there. More often than not, once they've made a wrong turn, they've gotten lost, they will drive to different cities, to different counties. I've found them in Mexico. They've been in different states, and they will drive and not ask for help. They won't stop to use the restroom. They will do anything that they can to try and make their way back home without anybody knowing that they've been missing.
In California, 44% of our Alzheimer's patients travel more than 4 miles. Unless we as law enforcement also familiarize ourselves with the care facilities, with the routes, with the areas that our Alzheimer's patients are most frequently, we're losing an invaluable part of our investigation.
My experience has been that once you have come across the Alzheimer's patient that has been driving, they are completely confident in what it is that they're doing. They know exactly where they're going. They may not have an explanation for why their car is not running at that point, but they are not going to agree with the fact that they shouldn't be driving, that you should take their car, that you should take their driver's license. They know where they're going, and they don't even understand why you're stopping them because they have someplace to go and they need to move on.
During any missing persons case, it's critical to get as much information out as possible so you can have as many ears and eyes assisting you in the location of that person, whether it's a missing 8-year-old or a 75-year-old Alzheimer's patient. The more resources you have, the more technology you use, the better the odds are you're getting a good result.
Well, as soon as you realize it's a high-risk case and you're going to be doing you're going to be needing to do a search of a specific area, say it's an urban area, and you start at the location where the person was last seen, and you decide what resources that you're going to need, additional patrol units, maybe some volunteers, explorers to assist you. You're going to also need maybe you're going to request scent dogs, possibly a helicopter, and start deploying the resources as soon as they get there. So the first people that are probably going to be there are your patrol units. And your patrol units, you're going to have to assign them specific areas. So get a map of that particular area and decide how far out your patrol units are going to search, whether it's a quarter mile, a half mile, or a mile out from the center where the person was last seen, and assign specific patrol units to check a specific area.
The use of search dogs in missing person cases is vital because often a dog is the only thing that can locate the individual when our human senses cannot. And by that I mean the dog can follow the subject from where they were last known to be. They can point law enforcement in a direction where the person may have been, but agencies need to be careful when they use search dogs in that the dog is a tool. The dog is a tool that can direct them where they need to look further or pay more attention to.
A short example of when a dog is not a good tool is if you have an Alzheimer's person who lives at home and they walk around the neighborhood on a regular basis. The dog would probably then give you a trail of that person's typical walking route because of the level of contamination and the number of times that person does that typical route. It would be very hard to get an exit trail from something like that in an area that contaminated. So there are times when trailing dogs or other search dogs would not be appropriate.
This disease is a progressive disease, and that means as time goes on, the worse their capabilities are for taking care of themselves in the field. So when they need it least, that first time they go missing is when they get their greatest response. As they progress further in the disease and as they wander more times, they are not getting better at wandering. Their faculties are declining. Their ability is declining. Their rate, however, of significant injury is increasing. In a 1999 study, researchers found that more than 60% of all persons who had dementia lived in a home where they had access to a loaded firearm. In that study, they also found 38% of the homes that were interviewed did not know whether the firearm in their home was loaded or not. This becomes an issue for a number of reasons. As the disease progresses, the person regresses in their memory through history, through time. Was this a person who'd had positive contact with law enforcement before or negative contact? Do they have experience in the military? Do they have experience as law enforcement officers themselves? Is reaching for a firearm habit or habitual for them? If someone is afraid and they call 911 because they think that there's an intruder on their property, that they don't see the same things you or I do, and they mistake the tree in the backyard or a neighbor's dog rustling in the garbage as a person, is their first response going to be to get a firearm? Now, you as a law enforcement officer arrive on scene hoping to calm down this nice old man who's called 911 about an intruder, and as you walk across the back of his property to either investigate the noise, investigate what was in the trash, to see whether or not there's a real intruder, now suddenly you may have become a target for the very person you're supposed to be helping.
Penal Code Section 14207 requires that when a missing person is found, the agency must report this to the Department of Justice and shall report it to the other agencies as appropriate. For an investigator, it's important to constantly assess and reevaluate the circumstances behind the missing person's disappearance. This is done to determine the risk factors and whether or not the missing person could be a victim of foul play or simply forgot to tell someone where they were going. In situations of suspicious circumstances, the officer has to keep a particular eye to the details without prejudice in order to quickly assess if the missing person is at immediate risk or if a possible crime has been committed. If a crime has been committed, the officer must then be prepared to search for a victim of foul play and investigate and arrest a potential suspect. There's a prevailing myth that the general public needs to wait at least 24 hours before calling in a missing persons report. Because of this myth, many persons who have gone missing don't get reported until it's late in their disappearance.
River City PD, this is Dispatcher 76.
Hello. My name is Jane Harris. I'm calling from Chicago, and I'm desperate. I haven't spoken to my daughter in 3 days, and this is highly unusual for us. We speak constantly.
And what is her name?
Her name is Patricia Collins.
Okay, what is her address?
She lives at 515 Noah Way in your town, and I wonder if there's any way you can help me by contacting her or going to the house or finding her husband.
What is his name?
His name is Carl Collins. They've been married for several years, but recently they've just been really having trouble. And
okay, we'll send an officer out to the address of 515 Noah Way, and we'll do a welfare check on your daughter, Patricia. If she's there, we'll have him give you a call.
Thank you. And could you notify me in any case, no matter what?
Okay, and I'll also put that in the text of the call that you want to call either way.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Jane.
Much.
Goodbye. River City PD, Dispatcher 76.
My name is Carl Collins.
Your name is Carl Collins?
Well, I'm calling because my wife isn't here at my house. I've been away, and I don't know where she is. Her name is Patricia Collins. My name, Collins.
Okay, and what is your address, Carl?
Yeah, 515 Noah Way.
Okay, you just come home from a business trip, and your wife is not there, correct?
Well, no. I got back early. Well, late last night, really. But I thought I had to wait 24 hours to report.
Well, you don't have to wait 24 hours to report someone missing. So you believe that your wife is missing?
Yeah.
Well, we do have an officer en route to the address on 515.
They're coming?
Yes, we have an officer coming to your address on Noah Way.
I thought I could do a missing persons report over the phone here. Just
not
call and
necessarily.
let you know that she's not here.
No, not necessarily, sir. We need to speak to you in person, and also we want to see if you have a current photo of her.
Yeah.
So if we do need to look for her, we know what she
Okay,
looks
good.
like.
Well, when will they be here?
I don't have an estimated time of arrival,
You
but
don't?
they are already en route.
Okay.
You will be there waiting for us?
Okay.
Okay. Great. I'll go ahead and enter this into the call.
Thanks.
Thank you, Carl.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Hi, police department.
Hi.
Hi.
Good.
Officer Williams, how you doing?
Good. Tom Wood. Carl.
Did you call the police?
Yes.
What's going on today?
Well, my wife's gone. Look, I was away on business trip, and I just got back, and she's nowhere to be found. So I'm a little concerned.
Okay. When did you get back?
Well, I got back last night, late last night, and she wasn't here, and I mean her car's in the driveway, so I'm just a little worried now.
Okay, and she hasn't called. Did you check the messages?
No. Well, actually, no, I haven't checked the messages.
Okay.
I was in the shower, and I heard her mom called looking for her, which is weird. I mean, they talk all the time, and well, it just makes me worried that something's Sure. wrong.
Well, okay. Well, the first thing that we normally do whenever there's a suspected missing person is we go ahead and check the residence. Just in case you're kind of worried, you may not have checked it thoroughly, and so that will just eliminate her being inside the house before we go any further.
Sure.
So my partner's going to go ahead and do that. Is that all right?
Sure.
Is that good?
Okay.
Sure.
All
Why don't we
right.
come on in, and we'll talk to you about that.
Okay. So I'm just going to get some preliminary information from you.
Yeah.
I will need a photo of her, like a good-sized photo if you have one, just in case I need to
Okay.
put that to the media. And what is her name?
Her name is Patricia.
Patricia? Okay.
Patricia. It's spelled regular. Yeah. Collins. Collins.
Okay, and what's her birthday?
Her birthday is, oh, geez. She's 34. She was born in 72. So I think it's September 18th.
Okay. All right, I'll figure it out. I know
Yeah,
you're
I'm
a
sorry.
little stressed out. No big deal. Okay. And you have checked the residence. Is her property here or clothes are here?
Yeah, see, that's the strange thing. I mean, everything is just normal as far as where it should be. I mean, none of her clothes are missing. Her suitcase is here. I've looked around. There's nothing missing in the house or jewelry.
Okay. And have you guys been having any problems? Are you getting along okay, or?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we're fine. We fight a little bit once in a while, but nothing major. I mean,
Yeah. House check's good.
All right, that sounds good. Well, you know, why don't you go ahead and do an area canvass, check the neighbors, see if they saw anything.
Okay.
I'm going to have you have a seat, and we're going to get some more preliminary information from you,
you're good?
okay? Yeah, I'm good, thanks.
Hi. Hi. How you doing this afternoon?
Fine, how are you?
Good, good. I was wondering if you mind if I asked you a few questions about your neighbors over there, Carl and Patricia?
Yeah.
Okay. When was the last time you saw Patricia?
Oh, gosh, I don't know, Sunday?
Well, how often do you usually see her?
I see her pretty much every day.
Pretty much
yeah.
every day? So you say you saw her last on Sunday?
Right.
Did you notice anything unusual or anything with regard to anything going on over there with like her and Carl?
Nothing unusual. I mean, they were fighting, but then they always fight.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it sounds like it would be pretty loud coming from all the way over there if you can actually, you hear them fight from inside the house?
They do it in the front yard a lot.
Really?
Yeah.
Have you ever seen any kind of physical confrontation as far as putting his hands on her or vice versa? Anything like that?
No, I don't think so.
No?
It's mostly just shouting.
Okay. We'd like to get some information from you if that's all right with you.
Sure.
Okay. So you did say that was Sunday was when you last saw her. About what time you think that was on Sunday?
Oh, gosh, that should, I'd say right around sunset, like 4:35, something like that.
Okay. So the last time you saw her, now did you notice her leave or anything like that?
No, they were still fighting when I went in the house, I think.
And that was the last you heard of them, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. Can I get your name, sir?
Yeah, Tom Jones.
So why was it that you thought you needed to wait 24 hours to give us a call?
Hey.
I'll be right back.
Okay, I spoke to some of the neighbors, and I went ahead and called the on-call investigator to come
Okay.
out and give us a hand.
That sounds good.
Okay.
All right. He called the investigators. They're going to come help us out.
At times, I think because it's a missing persons call, they think that they are just a report taker and all they need to do is jot down the missing persons. And they need to really realize that you don't know what you have. That 5 to 10% could still be there. 95% come home safe. But that 5 to 10%, when you're judged on your initial actions, do you want to be seen with just a face sheet saying John Doe is missing and that's it? No, you want to ask the questions of the reporting party. Is this person have any medical conditions? Or they have mental conditions? All the questions that would put them at risk. Document what you've asked. Document what you found out. And maybe even talk to neighbors and do a brief canvass because you don't know what you might be missing. And the walkthrough through that house, that's still a preliminary investigation.
Well, the first thing you have to realize is that when you're dealing with a missing persons case, missing persons is not, it's not a criminal thing. It's a non-criminal case. But when you start suspecting foul play or there's suspicious circumstances, you're switching from a non-criminal case to a criminal case. And so you really need to pay attention to who your reporting party is, what they're saying, whether there's any statements that are being made that are inconsistent. What's the demeanor of the reporting party? Are you getting any vibes that would cause you to think, okay, something's wrong here? Check the medicine chest, check the bathroom, see if there's any medications that would normally be there missing, toiletries, toothbrush, makeup if it's a woman, his razor if it's a man. Is the luggage there? Did they pack their clothes? Are there things missing? Look around the house to see if there's looks like maybe there might have been a struggle, something's broken, or if there's an area that looks like it might be cleaner than the rest of the house because it looked like something might have been cleaned up. Another thing, if the reporting party doesn't call you to their home and they come to the station or to the police office, instead of calling you to their house, they're coming because maybe they don't want you to see what's at their house. If that happens, you need to go to the house and check it out, wherever the last location where the missing person was. So you're going to have to start thinking again, instead of a non-criminal aspect, into the possibly handling the home as a crime scene. Maybe you're going to need a search warrant. Start thinking about a criminal investigation, and that's when you're going to need to call in a supervisor. Get the sergeant in there and then explain why you think that this is possibly more than just a missing persons case.
If you have a situation where a spouse is missing and you become concerned that there's a possibility of foul play, then your investigation needs to keep in mind that it needs to completely encompass that entire home, and the possibility that if there is foul play, that it's most likely going to be a family member or it's going to be someone that the missing person knows. And if you leave that scene and you leave potential evidence behind, you're leaving that evidence behind with your potential suspect, who can later on destroy that evidence and prevent you from being able to locate your missing person and properly investigating the case.
In a missing persons case where the circumstances are suspicious or possibly even unknown, it's even more critical that the information be obtained not only quickly, but to ensure absolute accuracy, or at least to the best extent possible. A re-interview of the reporting party and anyone else who would have information on the missing person is necessary. These parties should be obviously separated and their statements obtained away from the other one's hearing. And once again, the information that you obtain is probably going to be more complete than you would have obtained or the original reporting officer would have obtained.
If you're thinking that this might turn out to be a suspicious circumstances case, you might want to, if you have a tape recorder in your pocket and the reporting party is making statements, you might want to just turn on your recorder. It might not, if the missing person's found, you just, use that tape some other time. But it might be a vital piece of evidence if it turns out that it is a suspicious person's or suspicious case, foul play, homicide.
When an officer responds to take a report of a missing person, part of the victimology that they should include is getting the names of friends, acquaintances, and coworkers. Perhaps the missing person has confided in these people with information that the reporting party may not know about, and these could be investigative leads for you.
When it comes to suspicious circumstances, you want to get into the background and the history more of the person and what might be the type of suspicious circumstance that the reporting party is telling you about. Any type of situation where they've been talking to the reporting party on the cell phone or on the telephone, something weird happens in the background, they haven't spoken to the person since. That would be a suspicious circumstance. Leaving things in the house, personal items such as purses, car keys, if the vehicle's left at the apartment, that would be a suspicious circumstance when the person hasn't come home, but they've been expected to be home. Other types of suspicious circumstances would be calling the reporting party, telling them they're on their way home, they'll be home in 30 minutes. It's now been 4 hours and they haven't heard from them since. That's a missing person at risk. Any type of suspicious activity that's been going on, you need to know about the background of the suspicious activity. What type of people do they relate with? The type of people that may be wanting to harm this person. What are they involved in? Things like that. That all revolves around officer safety.
One of the resources available to your agency during a child abduction or missing person investigation is the Behavioral Analysis Unit. The Behavioral Analysis Unit is designed to assist during a missing person investigation to help identify the subjects. And basically, the information is provided to the Behavioral Analysis Unit, and they can give you a profile help narrow your search and who the subject might be. They can also provide information on victimology. The information that you provide about the victim will also give them information on the type of suspect that you're looking for and also narrow the search for your suspect. They can also provide expert testimony for your search warrants and for your arrest warrants.
Be on the lookout is generally sent out by the original responding officer to any call. In the case of a missing person, it may go out through the dispatcher before the original officer even arrives at the call. It will probably be updated as further information comes in. The dispatcher will put out just a general description of the person that's missing, what the circumstances are, and a direction to travel if there's any known. The officer who arrives at the scene will update that and include any other pertinent information, possible risk factors, once again, maybe a better description, and that could well be updated by the follow-up investigator hours later or even the following day, including more information that would be pertinent, such as any known risk factors that actually don't exist, directions to travel, medical conditions, something as mundane as having an injury that would make him or her easy to identify.
When doing the initial investigation, especially in high-risk circumstances, it's important to try to voluntarily get the missing person's immediate family to sign medical, dental, and DNA release forms to be followed up on if the missing person hasn't been located within 30 days after that initial report. It's also important in high-risk situations to gather as much DNA information while doing the initial investigation when the evidence is more likely to not be contaminated. Approaching the family regarding obtaining the releases and evidence may be a bit uncomfortable, but as an officer, you can assure them that gathering the information is standard procedure in missing persons cases. That way you ease their fears and you're more likely to get the evidence to complete your investigation.
The Department of Justice serves as a clearinghouse for both missing persons and unidentified remains. The database includes physical characteristics, dental charting, as well as DNA. The profiles are matched and the respective agencies are contacted when there's a match.
As investigators of both missing persons and unidentified persons, our goal is to obtain information that will allow us to identify an individual, whether they're alive or dead. We send that information from the Coroner's Department up to the Department of Justice Missing and Identified Persons Unit and into the DNA section. We provide this information to them, and then we wait for a potential match that might come from a missing person. Currently in California, only approximately 4% of missing persons cases have obtained dental records, skeletal x-rays, or identifying features of a medical variety to the missing persons unit.
It's important to collect DNA evidence early on in an investigation if you have a high-risk missing person. This gives you an opportunity to actually collect the evidence and prevent possible cross-contamination. When collecting items for DNA analysis, an officer should try and collect personal items belonging to the missing person that have not been commingled with any other family members, such as the missing person's clothing, toothbrush, hairbrush. You just want to ensure that none of the items have been commingled with other family members. This causes cross-contamination. Cross-contamination occurs when one person's DNA comes in contact with another person's DNA.
The coroner and medical examiner on occasion will call a forensic odontologist in to help them identify an unidentified body. The odontologist will come in and look at the body, take photographs of the mouth, of the teeth. We'll do a complete dental examination of that mouth, and we'll take dental x-rays of the teeth.
As an investigator, it's important to work closely with the medical examiner or coroner with regard to your missing persons, the suspicious ones, unknown circumstances, possible suicides. Provide them with a copy of the missing person report, and then in the event that a John or Jane Doe is found, they could possibly match that up by referring to the file that they have on the missing persons in your county.
There are primarily 4 ways to identify a person who is either unable or unwilling to identify themselves, and those are going to be 3 scientific methods and 1 non-scientific method. I call them the big 3+1. Those are fingerprints, dental records, DNA, and the last one is a photograph, preferably a smiling photograph that shows teeth.
It's important for the investigators to give a missing person dental form to the family of the missing person. This family can take that form to the dentist and report to the dentist our family member's missing. They sign the form, and then the dentist is obligated to turn over the dental records and dental x-rays to that family member. The family member then, in turn, turns those records over to the law enforcement agency.
In the event the family members are unable to actually get the dental records from the dentist, the law enforcement officer is capable of doing that by filling out a form, and as a peace officer, you are entitled to obtain those records. You go to the dentist, literally pick them up, and submit them to the Department of Justice for the dental charting.
Before DNA kits will be distributed, the law enforcement agency has to exhaust all means to identify the person through conventional methods. When I say conventional methods, I'm meaning by physical, fingerprint, dental, or anthropological identification. If the law enforcement agency is unable to identify through one of these means, then the agency can contact the Department of Justice Missing Persons DNA Program and request to submit DNA samples. Kits are distributed on an as-needed basis. They're free. They contain all the material that an officer needs to collect the samples and return them back to the laboratory.
Please remember that not everybody has fingerprints on file, but most people have been to the dentist at some time in their life, so they should have dental records available. Evidence has been saved from cold cases many years ago that's now being used in with DNA technology, and who would have thought 15, 20 years ago that would have happened? And maybe the similar things will happen with dentistry.
It's a good idea to take a chaplain along with you when you're going to collect DNA samples. Many times the family member is very distraught, they're emotional, they're crying. By having a chaplain there, he is able to help the family member through the process. This also allows the officer to collect the samples according to the guidelines and not distract the officer from the collection process. It also prevents the possibility of cross-contamination.
Officers, dispatchers, or other designated personnel shall give the reporting party a Department of Justice Form BCIA 4048, which authorizes the release of dental medical records and/or dental and skeletal x-rays and the release of a recent photograph if the missing person is under 18 years of age. Penal Code 14206A states that an officer can obtain the photograph, dental skeletal x-rays, and medical records by written declaration when a person is still missing after 30 days. Section 14206 also allows that when a child under 18 years of age is at risk or missing under suspicious circumstances, the agency may immediately obtain dental skeletal x-rays, medical records, and a photograph by the use of a written declaration. According to Penal Code Section 14250C, law enforcement agencies shall recontact immediate family or relatives of a missing person to advise them of their right to provide a voluntary sample for DNA testing. PC 14250C3 reminds officers that submitting DNA samples for analysis is voluntary. No incentive or coercion may be used to compel a parent or relative to provide a sample. Section 14206B recommends that law enforcement confer with the coroner or medical examiner and submit a missing person report and the dental charts, dental x-rays, skeletal x-rays, and photographs to the DOJ when the missing person has not been found within 45 days. When it comes to parental abductions, it's not just a civil matter. The laws are clear, and you need to treat these abductions the same as any other missing persons situation. The child that's gone missing by way of a parent can be in danger of serious potential physical or emotional damage, depending upon the complex relationships within the family and the emotional health of the abducting parent. Never assume that because the child is with his or her abducting parent, that the child is out of harm's way.
River City PD, dispatcher 87.
Hi, I need your help. I went to my ex-husband's apartment and I went to go pick up my daughter and she's not there. Like, everything is gone. Like,
What is your name, ma'am?
Angela Martinez.
Okay, Angela. When was the last time you saw your daughter?
I saw her 4 days ago. Yeah, can you help me, please? You gotta send someone out here immediately.
Okay, what's your daughter's name?
Her name's Shannon.
The same last name as you?
Martinez.
And what's your ex-husband's name?
Carlos. Same last name.
And did the neighbors say when they were last seen?
No, the neighbors heard a bunch of commotion, like they were packing up boxes and stuff. I mean, he is gone. Like, he's probably headed into Mexico, and I might not ever see them again.
What kind of car does he drive?
A white Ford truck.
And do you know the license plate of the truck?
No, I don't know the license plate. Can't you just please send someone over here now?
Okay, and is your daughter white, black, Hispanic, or Asian?
She's Hispanic.
And how old is she?
She's 5.
How tall is she?
She's about 4 feet tall.
And how much does she weigh?
She's like 40 pounds.
And your husband, white, black, or Hispanic?
He's a jerk.
Or Asian?
Oh, he's a Hispanic.
Does he have family members in Mexico?
Yeah, he has family in Mexico. That's why I think that they're on their way down there now. So it's really important for you guys to get like an Amber Alert going. Can we please just...
Okay, what I'd like for you to do, Angela, is I'd like for you to stay there so I can send an officer to you to make contact.
Well, how long will that be? I don't know. I mean, doesn't this meet all the criteria? She's not even here.
The officer will come out, and once he or she makes the evaluation, then they'll decide if they can do an Amber Alert.
Okay.
And if anything else pops up, you can call us back.
Fine. Hurry, please.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Hi, I'm Deputy Porter. What seems to be the problem?
My child is not in the with her dad right now. He's gone. He's not in the apartment.
Okay.
Okay. I'm supposed to pick up my child, and they're gone. Like, the place is empty.
What's the arrangement between you and your husband?
We're separated.
Okay.
We're
Is he the
going through a
biological
divorce.
father?
Yeah, he's the biological father.
Are there any court orders?
No.
What makes you think your child's been abducted?
The apartment is totally empty.
Okay, what would you like for me to do for you?
An Amber Alert. Can you put out an Amber Alert, please?
Well, this doesn't meet the criteria for an Amber Alert, but what I can do for you is put out a radio broadcast of her description, his description, and the description of the vehicle, okay? And that'll go out to agencies in the area,
But
the
my
border.
child is gone, and she's going into Mexico right now, and how am I going to stop her?
We're going to do everything we can to get your child back, okay? What I'm going to need from you is a photo of your daughter and your ex-husband, and if you have one of the vehicle, and all this information will be helpful. Do you know the license plate number?
No.
Okay, that's fine. I can run his name and date of birth and get that plate, all right? What I'm going to do for you is I'll make a missing persons report, all right? Your child will be entered into the National Information System for Missing Children.
Is it an Amber Alert? Are you putting out an Amber Alert?
It's not an Amber Alert because this doesn't meet the criteria for that. I need the information from you so that I can put the information out to the other authorities, but I need those photographs from you, okay?
Okay.
Anytime a child that is under the age of 18 or, at the request of law enforcement, between the ages of 21 and 18, is reported missing. Missing is whose whereabouts are unknown to their parent or guardian. That it is the law that a police officer immediately take a report and place that child's name into NCIC, National Crime Information Center.
If a case doesn't meet the AMBER criteria, there are several other processes in place that will help assist locate and recover the victim. The first one is the Emergency Digital Information System, or EDIS. That information, once entered into CLETS, goes out to all law enforcement agencies as well as the media, so that the information can still be broadcast at the media's discretion. Law enforcement also needs to put out the Be on the Lookouts, or BOLOs, as quickly as possible, so all law enforcement agencies will have that information to be able to attempt to locate that vehicle. Third, obtain pictures of the victim, the suspect, and the suspect vehicle if available, and immediately produce a critical reach flyer disseminated to all law enforcement agencies, to the media. It's also has the capacity of disseminating information to local hospitals, schools, churches, other things that have fax capabilities. So it's important to get those out as soon as possible. Another good resource is the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. They have a lot of resources available to assist law enforcement with various tools to help assist in the recovery of those children who have been taken.
The California Missing Children Clearinghouse works very closely with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. On an ongoing basis, we share information with the National Center, and the National Center shares information with the California Department of Justice. We make this information available to local law enforcement agencies who are conducting investigations of missing children.
In cases where the parents have abducted the children and fled interstate, the FBI can become involved in the investigation through the Unlawful Flight to Avoid Prosecution Act. The local agency will obtain their 278.5 felony arrest warrant, and then the district attorney's office then requests the FBI to obtain a UFAP warrant. Once we have obtained that, then we're able to obtain a UFAP warrant, allows us to then enter the investigation and use our interstate resources with FBI offices throughout the United States in order to help locate the child.
We have to understand that it is a crime when these non-custodial parents take a child. It's not just that they brought some kid back late or from custody. It's not that they've ignored a court order. It's against the law, and we have to operate that way.
In parental abduction cases, it's obviously very important that not only the child's name be entered into MUPS and NCIC, but equally important that the possible abducting parent's name be entered in there. Once this is done, any officer who runs either the vehicle, the child's name, or the abducting parent's name will get a hit, and that way it can be determined that you do in fact have an abducted child here. As we all know, a 1-year-old child's unable to give its name, and so just entering that child's name into NCIC alone is of very little value.
The way I look at it is that when the child's missing, you report the child missing, and if the child's found 10 minutes later, then you unreport it and you take it out of the NCIC. But there's still that report and there's still that documentation.
One of the services that we can provide is to do a public database search on the missing person, or possibly on an abducting parent or an individual that may have a credit history or may have a professional license in California or any other state for that matter. These public database searches have resulted in the recovery of missing children in many cases.
In the FBI's Child Abduction Response Plan, in addition to the investigative section, there is also a resource section. The investigator can access the resource directory and find all the various resources he needs to respond to the child abduction.
One of the greatest threats to children is being taken or abducted by a non-custodial parent. You know, we would like to think that that parents always have the child's best interest in mind, but unfortunately that's not the case. And children are not taken to be loved, cherished, and protected. Children are taken to be used as pawns. They represent that fair relationship. They're forced to grow up often without the proper peer relations, medical attention, without the proper education. The only thing these kids are guilty of is being born to a bad parent. These children quite frequently are skirted from home to home, oftentimes not enrolled in schools or enrolled in schools until there's a demand for records in which time they're whisked away. Sometimes they're forced to change their name. It's really a shame that the parents have to use that. It's very also a complicated case because there are a lot of legal issues that are involved. California, of course, has the best response, having special prosecutors and special investigators to handle these cases that can be very difficult because they go from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. They can be very difficult because quite frequently they involve civil law, and they can be very difficult because sometimes you try to make sure that you are doing what is in best interest of the child. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children does not get involved in a family abduction case until there is a warrant issued for the abducting parent.
The Foreign Prosecution and Law Enforcement Unit was formed by the Attorney General's Office of the Department of Justice because of its long history of working with Mexican officials. And in that long record of history of working with Mexican officials, we have been able and successfully able to assist California law enforcement, and particularly in the areas of child abduction returns. The unit is staffed by special skill agents and personnel that are skilled in the understanding the culture of the Mexican culture, and also are bilingual, understand the protocols and the laws of Mexico. And this enables our agents and personnel to successfully assist California law enforcement.
A scenario where there's a parental abduction, that the suspect may be heading towards Mexico, law enforcement agencies need to immediately get the be on the lookout information out to all law enforcement agencies that would be affected by that path of travel. Secondly, they need to make sure that the vehicle, the suspect, and the victim are entered into the appropriate automated systems, such as NCIC, DOJ hold and stop on the vehicle, so that if they are stopped, that they can be apprehended. Once they cross the border, there are several things that can be done. There are several Mexican liaison units in the southern part of the state that deal directly with the Mexican authorities in trying to recover the children in Mexico and bring them back to their parent. The FBI would need to be involved early on in the case because of the crossing of international borders. And there's also a system in place with the Border Patrol at the border crossings that can tell whether that vehicle has actually crossed into Mexico or has not crossed into Mexico, which would then allow us to focus our search of that person a little more concentrated.
Now, because of our contacts throughout Mexico, if we have information, for an example, the city and the state in Mexico, we can contact our counterparts in Mexico, usually the state judicial authorities, and ask them to assist us in locating the minor with the information that is provided by law enforcement to us.
The FBI also responds to parental abductions that go international. The FBI has legal attachés, FBI agents that are assigned to various countries throughout the world. The FBI has the ability to use those contacts in the foreign countries in order to help locate and recover the child in that country.
What makes our unit so unique is that in addition to special agents that will assist law enforcement by traveling into Mexico and contacting Mexican officials, the unit has a full-time translator. This is a very important position because we also provide, at no cost to agencies, complete translation of court documents and the Hague application or any other relevant document that is needed to complete the Hague case or the Hague application.
Penal Code Section 278 states that it can be a felony in California to deprive a person with parental rights custody of their child. This code goes on to say that it is a violation of federal law for one parent to take the child out of the country to prevent the exercise of parental rights by the other parent. According to Penal Code 14209B, local reporting agencies shall attempt to obtain the most recent photograph available for persons under 18 and forward the photograph to the Department of Justice. When a child runs away from home, there may be a variety of motivating factors that may cause them to leave. It's sometimes tempting to write off cases of runaways, especially when it seems habitual and based on the bad or poor judgment of the runaway youth in question. However, runaways are deserving of as much attention as any reported missing person at risk. Chances are that they've run for a reason, or worse yet, that they'll run to something or someone that will cause them to be in harm's way.
No, of course I didn't do that. I've been here all day. No, I called her. Of course I called Kevin. What are you thinking? Look, I need you here tonight. No. Can you just get here right now? We'll talk to them. Yep, the officers are here. I've got to go. Hello.
Hi, I'm Deputy Williams. This is Deputy Smith, River County Sheriff's Department.
Hi.
Did you call to report a runaway juvenile?
Yes, I did. My daughter. She didn't come home last night, and I came to school this morning and I found out she's not been here.
Okay, I'd like to get some more information from you. Can we step inside the school office and talk?
Okay.
So has Daniela ever run away before?
I was reluctant to tell you that this is the third time. You see, last time I reported it, the officer treated it like it wasn't any big deal, but this is a big deal. She's never been gone overnight before.
Okay, ma'am. I assure you we'll do everything to find your daughter, okay?
The last two times that she ran away, she was gone for, I don't know, a few hours. I don't know where she went, but she came back home. I dropped her off yesterday morning at school, and I haven't seen her since. I've been bringing her to school and dropping her off and picking her up, and now I find out she hasn't been here for the last 3 days.
Okay. Sounds like her pattern behavior has changed. Is she seeing the same friends?
She doesn't even bring her friends home anymore. I don't know their names, or they seem to. Oh, there is one girl I know, Zoe Tynes. She goes to school here.
Okay. What we'll do is we'll check the school records and we'll get a hold of Zoe and talk to her, okay?
Okay.
Hi, Zoe. I'm Deputy Smith.
Hi.
This is Deputy Williams.
Hi, Zoe.
Hi.
We want to ask you about one of your friends. You know Daniela?
Kind of. We had like one class together. I don't really know her.
Well, how long have you known of her?
I don't know, like a year.
Do you guys ever hang out?
Not really.
Okay, her mother seems to think you guys do.
She's wrong.
Zoe, what I want to talk to you about, we're not judging anybody here. And when we looked at the school records, we noticed that you were missing some of the same days that Daniela was. How would you feel if something happened to Daniela and you had information that could help her? Do you care about Daniela?
But I don't know her.
Okay, but do you care about her?
Well, yeah, I guess.
Do you think teenagers make bad decisions sometimes?
Sometimes.
So that'd be yes. Do you think Daniela might be making bad decisions right now?
Yeah.
Why don't you go ahead and just tell us what you know?
Yesterday, we were out with this guy, Nikki, who she's usually with, near some, like, motel.
What's going on with, is she doing this willingly?
Probably sex for money.
Okay.
Drugs.
And how long has she been doing this?
Few months.
Does he have any guns?
Guns, I haven't seen any, but drugs, ecstasy, and methamphetamine.
And you mentioned that she's doing ecstasy and meth. Who's giving her
Yes.
this ecstasy and meth?
Oh, Nikki is.
Zoe, I noticed you had a cell phone on you.
Yeah.
Does that have picture capacity? It looks like it does.
It does.
Do you have any pictures of Daniela in your phone? Would it be all right if I borrowed your phone for a while so I can email her photo?
That's fine.
For flyers. Hi, Deputy Smith.
Hi.
Deputy Williams, River County Sheriff.
Hey.
We're investigating a runaway juvenile. We think she might be staying here at this motel.
Have you ever seen this girl before?
Hey, I see a lot of girls in here.
Can you check the registry for room number 4?
Sure.
Thanks.
Here you go.
How long has this guy been here?
He's been here a while.
Can I get a printout of that?
Okay.
Have you seen much movement in and out of the room recently?
I'm busy. I don't see much around here. Here you go.
Hey, Rich, isn't that her?
Oh, jeez. Daniela, Deputy Smith.
My name's not Daniela.
Yes, you are, Daniela. Daniela, I need you to get back. I need to talk to you. We know all about Nikki. We know all about the situation. We're here to help you. I just want you to calm down. We want to get you out of the focus of the front of the motel here as soon as possible, okay? Can I have you have a seat? Matt, can you run this guy? Okay. Daniela, have a seat. Calm down, calm down. You okay?
Yeah, I'm fine.
You're not on any drugs right now? Is Nikki in the room? Is Nikki in the room?
Yeah.
Okay, does he have any guns on him?
I don't know. Yeah.
Any dope in the room? Is he by himself? How long has he been here?
I don't know, a couple days.
And you've been here with him for a couple days, or how long?
Yeah. A couple days.
Okay, great.
I didn't do anything. You can't even tell me what I did. She knew what she was doing. She asked for it. Oh, you fuck all better to do with your fucking time, you bloke.
You know, kids are the only thing in America that don't come with instructions, and anybody can have kids, even stupid people. Sometimes stupid people have a lot of kids. But the truth is that when children do leave their homes, they leave the safety. Everybody has a zone of safety. Depending upon your age, that zone might be, if for a toddler, within the eyesight of their parent. For a child that's a teenager, it might be a curfew. But there's a certain comfort zone where that child, could probably be okay. What happens when that child goes outside that zone of safety, such as when they do run away? One of the misconceptions of law enforcement is that we feel that the more often a kid runs away, he becomes streetwise, he becomes better. And no, what happens is the child uses up their access to resources. They use up their access to support, and they become more vulnerable to the people whose sole intent and desire is to victimize that child, to child molesters. We need to understand what a child molester is. You know, it's not a sickness, it's not an illness, it's not a disease. It is obsessive behavior to exercise your power, will, and control over someone who is helpless.
There's no such thing as a missing child report that is entered into the system too soon. It's much easier to take a report of a missing child out of the system once they return home than it is to put them into the system after it's too late.
One of the common occurrences with the runaways that I've experienced is with the females, for instance. Unfortunately, they are taken advantage of. They become victims to alcohol, drugs, prostitution. The same thing has a tendency that there's the same type of thing can happen with your males. But what happens with your males is they want to go out on their own and they want to be that man. And in order to be that man, they have to do certain things. And the same people that victimize the female runaways by getting them involved in drugs, alcohol, and prostitution, what they do with these younger male juveniles is have them committing crimes for them. And sometimes we get the kids home and they haven't done something that will affect them for the rest of their life. But unfortunately, all too often, these runaways get themselves involved in things that negatively affect them completely for the rest of their life.
Teenagers will put themselves in positions time and time and again. And a lot of times these girls are just spending time with their girlfriends or somebody they know. But it's still important to investigate these cases and talk to their friends, see if where they were picked up last. For example, this could be key. Look at the old reports on this chronic runaway. Now, if she was picked up in your stroll area the last time she was found, you probably want to start looking at this girl starting to get involved in drugs and prostitution. And because of that, just, again, kind of don't just take a chronic juvenile for granted. Do some research, do some delving, pull old reports, and talk to people, because as they're out for any length of time, the longer they get out, they may be getting more bold in what they can do and how to handle themselves and figuring they're adults and party, and that leads to serious situations which could place them in jeopardy.
In an effort to address missing juveniles and runaways, the FBI has established the Innocent Lost National Initiative. It is an initiative designed to address child prostitution. The way the initiative is set up is we're establishing a database of the child prostitution victims and the pimps. Your agency can access this database and hopefully determine where the missing child may be.
We do something we call a social autopsy, where you take the 16 or 15-year-old, the one that's been in all the trouble all the time, and you go back and you see how many contacts he's had with the police departments and how many times he's been disciplined in school and how many times social services have had contact with him. And you see that we knew long, long ago he was headed down this road, and we did nothing to stop it. We didn't talk together, we didn't work together, we didn't form that bond around that child to protect the child. And it's such a shame that we got 14 and 15-year-old kids that it's too late for. And that is absolutely wrong.
In the case of any missing child, obviously even more so with an abduction or a suspected abduction, but any missing child has to be reported immediately to NCIC. This is done in California through the missing persons entry automatically. It's also necessary, required by law, but can also be quite useful to report the child to the school. As I say, the California Penal Code not only requires it, but in a great number of cases, little Johnny or little Mary is actually showing up at school every day for their hot breakfast. And if the school didn't know they were missing to begin with, we wouldn't be able to clear the case.
All these girls have one thing in common, and they like to write. And if you go in their rooms, you can see diaries, you can see letters, what they're talking about, and they're pretty graphic at times. but it gives you a clue of where your investigation is going. They may have even talked. You may see gang influence in there. You may see them talking about an older male beyond the teenage years, and you may even see reference to prostitution. You may also see their plans, where they're going. A cell phone will give you historical data as to who they've been calling. And even though you don't know where those phone calls are going to, you see repeated, you can always call some of those numbers and ask who's there. One of the things I've used to get girls home, I'll call a number and the person says they know them, but they don't know where she is. And I'll use a technique where I'll explain that she could be getting adults in trouble for contributing. Anybody using drugs, the police will be out looking for them, involved in illicit behavior. And I tell them my investigation ends when she returns home. And so if she is in some of these riskier situations, the friends get word out that the police are looking for them. In a lot of cases, they return within 24 hours once I start making these contacts. So something as simple as that could help you out. The cell phones, if they're not at home, you can triangulate maybe in a more serious case to try to locate where they're at and kind of isolate them within a half mile. But then you have to kind of have some concept where they are in that half mile. Cell phones nowadays, some of them have GPS, which will give you real time where they are. So when you call into the phone company, they'll give you coordinates, and you can go to MapQuest and punch in longitude and latitude, put it in, and now you've got they'll pull up a map and point exactly where they're at.
In any case involving a missing person where there may be information or technology available to track them, such as an adult with a credit card or an ATM card, an adult or a child that has a cellular telephone or a PDA that's possibly GPS capable, it's important that the reporting party, the parents or the responsible party, be made aware that they should not disconnect those phones, they should not discontinue any credit cards, because that's eliminating a valuable tool for us. In the case of credit card accounts and even cellular telephone accounts, the parent or responsible party can quite often get the information in a much more timely manner than we can if they are privy to the account information and any passwords. They can obtain that and provide it to us quickly, whereas if law enforcement has to obtain the information ourselves, it's going to require some sort of legal process, whether a court order, a subpoena, or even a search warrant.
Because we do have a lot of gangs in this type of area, what a big question that we would ask parents or things like that of juveniles is if they're in a gang, what kind of gang they associate with, maybe what type of colors they display, any type of tattoos that might be associated with that gang, and then most importantly, where does the gang hang out, and who might be somebody in the gang that's a personal contact of them that they hang out with. Another thing that gangs has relevance to is the type of weapons they might be associated with, things like that. So officer safety info is a big thing related to gangs.
Runaway juveniles' friends are generally going to give you more information than the parent. By contacting the friends, you get a better sense of what the juvenile's involved in. You try to get their best friend or the one they have most contact with. And it's kind of, when you find out your juvenile is missing, you find out who her best friend is, and immediately, if it's during school session, see if that child's still in school, because that's what we call a clue. She may be running with this girl. Or even if that girl is still in school, you check her attendance records, because you might find she's been gone at the same time as your missing person, but returned. And an interview might bring out the fact that she was with her girlfriend and she was afraid and didn't want to get involved with what her girlfriend was involved in. If you approach these girls, interview them separately, because they're going to have strength if they're in front of other girls. They don't want to snitch on their friend. It's very powerful, especially in teenage years. You don't want to approach them from a copyish attitude and demand answers.
We have to intervene now and then. We have to intervene now by making sure that all the information is gathered, that we conduct our investigations, and that we care about, the recovery of that child. And then we also have to understand that perhaps there needs to be a follow-up as to why this child had ran away, what happened to this child when they were run away, and what we can do in terms of offering resources to them so that this doesn't happen again.
As an investigator or police officer investigating a missing persons, more specifically a runaway juvenile case, it's important that you debrief that juvenile or talk to them after you've recovered them. Find out why they've run away, maybe a little detail of where they've gone and what made them start thinking about running away, whether it's a party type situation or maybe they're running from a cycle of abuse at home. They're fearful of the system. They may be angry. If you sometimes just ask a simple question, what would keep you from running away again? And then sending them in the direction of a proper resources, whether it be Child Protective Services, whether it be one of your child abuse detectives, or just sitting there and talking to them about how future, what they want out of their future, and maybe some goals for them to take away the despair and maybe give them hope in some of those questions they have. That might be just enough to keep them home.
California Education Code 49068.6a requires that within 10 days of a child's disappearance, the agency responsible for the investigation shall inform the child's school that he or she is missing. The notice shall be made in writing and include a photograph. The Education Code 49076 allows the school districts to release information from pupil records to the appropriate persons in connection with an emergency if the knowledge of the information is necessary to protect the health or safety of a pupil or other persons. The state law requires that law enforcement should recontact the reporting party within 30 days of filing the initial report to check on the status of the missing person. Probably the biggest fear that parents have is that their child might be the victim of abduction by a stranger. For law enforcement, this could be a high-profile case in the making. In cases of child abductions, studies show the majority of children are killed within the first 3 hours of the abduction. The 2002 abduction of Tamara Brooks and Jackie Maris was all over the media. The fact that they had been abducted was news enough. The fact that they were recovered by way of California's first ever statewide Amber Alert forever changed the methods that law enforcement now use on a nationwide basis for search and rescue of abducted children.
On July 31st of 2002, myself and a really good friend of mine, we decided to go to a lookout point. It was about 11 p.m. Approximately 15 minutes later, another vehicle arrived, and it was in that vehicle, that was Roy Ratcliffe. He was the individual who chose that night to kidnap myself and another young woman, Jackie Maris. He approached the Bronco with a gun pulled. Then he took my friend out of the Bronco, tied him up, had me tied up inside of the Bronco with duct tape. It was maybe about an hour or two of driving. And at this point in time, Ratcliffe decided to load both of his guns, fired a few shots out of the door. He opened up the door, decided he was going to go to sleep, left the driver's side door partly ajar. And when he was snoring, that was when Jackie and I officially got up, established, okay, there's a knife in here. We have his whiskey bottle. I reached over. Ratcliffe got the knife. It was hanging off the gear shift. And grabbed the whiskey bottle. After several times of counting, 1, 2, 3, Jackie attempted to stab him in the neck, which it ended up just slicing his neck, hit him in the face twice with his whiskey bottle. We shoved him out the Bronco, locked the door, grabbed the keys lying in the passenger seat, and realized we had the wrong set. Our captor did not die. However, we ended up letting him in after a lot of yelling back and forth. Let him back into the Bronco. And once he gets back in, a vehicle just so happened to drive by at that point in time, and he made it very clear that, one, he was going to let us go at this point and get another vehicle. Two, now that someone has driven by and they probably saw blood spattered on the side of the Bronco, they were probably going to call the police. And three, if that were to happen, once we got to the bottom of the hill, it was going to be bad news at that point if the police did show up. I'm guessing about an hour and a half went by, and that was when I heard something that sounded like a helicopter. And then he tried to outrun the police. At this point in time, the Kern County Police, they had showed up. They had their shotguns trained on the Bronco. We were in a hilly terrain, so it was more off-roading. Ended up slamming into a boulder, which broke the driver's shaft, and the Bronco could no longer go forward. That's when Ratcliffe grabbed one of his guns, climbed to the back where Jackie and I were, and made what sounded like a threat in a sense, as of, I have the girls, what are you gonna do? And he fired the first shot out of the windshield, and then that's when return fire was returned upon the Bronco and Ratcliffe, and that was when I sat there and saw him get shot to death. And at that point in time, it was rather surreal, because to have a driver's seat bouncing back towards your face as each bullet is hitting it. And then silence. Jackie and I, we both hop up. I go through the back window. She goes through the driver's side window, and we're in each other's arms crying and thanking God that we had survived. So the Amber Alert, I owe my life to it. I owe my life to everyone who cared.
Today was such a good day at school. Yeah, besides the teacher. She yelled at me for getting my paper. Oh, she's mean. Yeah. Well, I guess I'll see you tomorrow.
Wait.
All right, stop.
Get her now!
Hi, I'm Richard G. Antonio with the Sheriff's Department.
Hello, officer. What's going on with Cheryl?
Well, I already spoke with Cheryl's friends, and I need to get some additional information from you. Do you have a recent photo and emergency contact card for her?
I absolutely do. This is her most recent school photo and her contact information.
Okay, I'm going to give you my business card. It has an email address that I need this photo sent out to immediately.
It will go out immediately.
Okay.
Now, do you need it faxed also?
No, we'll start out with just having it emailed out.
All right.
Are you aware of any similar problems that may have occurred here or similar incidences that may have occurred?
You know, a couple of weeks ago we had a van cruising the neighborhood here, and it was a brownish copper-colored van. I called that in at that time.
Okay, did they use that same address for this incident?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, then we can pull up that report and I'll have all that information from that van or any additional information from there.
Great.
Okay, are you aware of any problems that Cheryl may have been having at home versus, is this a stranger who may have taken her versus a parent issue?
No, they have a great family. I just don't think this is a family issue at all. I think it must be an abduction.
Okay, well, this appears to meet the criteria for an Amber Alert. What I need to do is I'm going to initiate what's called a BOLO, be on the lookout. We'll go out to all the local law enforcement agencies. When I initiate or request an Amber Alert, I'm going to go through my communication center and I'm going to request through my supervisor that this occurs. And he will go through the CHP who will initiate it.
I see. And so is that going to happen right away?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Well, we need to get something done right away.
Okay. If I need any additional information from you, I'll be in contact with you.
You contact me. I'll give you any help you need.
All right. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Your daughter's fine, ma'am. None of the marked units are bringing over here right now.
Thank God.
The very first case that this technology was used by law enforcement was a kidnap for ransom out of Hillsborough, California. A 9-year-old girl coming out of school, walking with her classmates, when a van pulled up with 2 men inside, one driving, the other in the back. The guy in the back opened up the back door, grabbed the little girl, threw her in the van, and they took off. The friends were able to get a description of the vehicle, a description of the suspects, and they notified the principal, who notified the police department, and we took off from there. We got a school photo, put a then track flyer out, and it was distributed so widely, so quickly, that the suspects thought that there was no place in the Bay Area that they could go with this little girl that they wouldn't be recognized. So they took her over to the Hilton Hotel, gave her money to call home, and dropped her off. The chief in Hillsborough credits the track flyers with her safe return.
The California Amber Alert system was modeled after the Amber Plan in 1996 after 9-year-old Amber Hagerman was abducted from her home in Arlington, Texas. She was later discovered and found murdered. In 1998, California initiated its first regional Amber program in Orange County. In 2002, then Governor Gray Davis signed into law the California Child Safety Amber Network, which mandated that all agencies establish Amber plans within California and directed the California Highway Patrol to oversee that program statewide.
When a child abducted by a non-family member, 74% of them are murdered within the first 3 hours. What that tells us as law enforcement agencies is that we need to have a pre-planned response, and we have to use all the resources available to us. And one of those resources is the FBI.
Starting back in 1992, the Polly Klaas case, in a conversation with Mark Klaas, he told me that the resources were so scarce at that time that in order to get flyers out on the case back then, it cost his family $63,000 in printing costs, postage costs, to be able to get these flyers out, and it took 9 days. Now we can do the same thing in minutes for free.
If we were to activate Amber Alerts for every runaway juvenile or for every kid that shows up missing, eventually the public would get tired of seeing that come across their TVs and interrupting their radio waves. It'd be similar to a car alarm. When car alarms first came out, everybody would turn to look to see what was going on when the car alarm went off. Now a car alarm goes off, most people just kind of ignore it. We do not want that to happen with the Amber Alert system.
If there's a question as far as if it's a non-family abduction or if it's a runaway, conduct parallel investigations. Conduct investigations where crime scenes are protected and where evidence is being gathered, just in case it happens to be those worst-case scenarios.
There's 4 criteria that need to be established to activate an Amber Alert. The first criteria is that it must be a confirmed abduction. The second criteria is that the victim must be 17 years of age or younger, or a person with a mental or physical disability. The third criteria is that there must be imminent danger of serious bodily injury or death to the victim. And the fourth criteria is that there must be enough information available that, if disseminated to the public, would assist in the safe recovery of the victim.
We give out a guide for police officers throughout America. It's a first responder guide, and it has a checklist on it. You know, when you get on an airplane, no matter how many times that pilot has taken off, they have a checklist that they go down so they don't forget something. And we encourage officers to use those checklists so that you don't skip over something easy, or so that you are reminded that the first thing you need to do is to search the child's residence thoroughly, even if the child's not being reported missing from their residence, because sometimes they wind up being home, or sometimes you're misled by the reports of the person or by the words of the person reporting the child missing. A very famous case down in Mexico, where a grandma pointed down the road and said, the last time I saw him, he was going that way. And everybody assumed that the child wasn't at home. And what had happened was the child accidentally locked himself in the trunk of a station wagon that was parked on a driveway and stayed there for 2 weeks until a jogger smelled a strange odor.
The most successful Amber Alerts are when all law enforcement agencies cooperate together, along with the Broadcasters Association and the media. Once that is accomplished and personal feelings are set aside, information is disseminated more quickly, victims are recovered more quickly,
and returned to their families, and suspects are taken into custody. That interworking between agencies that you don't see a lot of times really comes into play when Amber Alerts, because everybody really has the feeling that this is the safety of our kids, the safety of our future, and we need to have every effort available out there to help recover these kids before any harm comes to them.
Most children are not abducted, they are seducted, and they're seducted by someone who gains legitimate access to that child.
When investigating stranger abductions, one of the resources available to your agency is the Violent Criminal Apprehension Program, VICAP. The program is designed to provide access to a database where the investigating officer can determine whether there are any similar incidents, whether it be description of the subject, description of the vehicles, the manner in which the abduction took place. Those unique descriptors are put into the database, and hopefully there may be another situation that might help you lead to who the suspect is.
The Violent Crime Information Center, or VCIC, is made available to local law enforcement agencies in a number of ways. One is through the Law Enforcement Megan's Law, which is available over the Department of Justice intranet. Secondly, law enforcement agencies have access to missing person information through the California Missing Persons System. In addition, the California law enforcement agencies can telephone our investigative support program, which can provide additional information and integrate some of the data that may be present on some of these different databases.
In the past, there's been a tendency for law enforcement officers to want to hold back the information so that they could be in the right place at the right time to take credit for the arrest. The change that has occurred now is that the person that ends up with the credit is the person that shares the information that allows the arrest to be made. So I think, if nothing else, that's the biggest thing that we have changed in law enforcement.
CART is an acronym for Child Abduction Response Team. It is a concept that was developed out of the state of Florida shortly after the Carly Bruscia abduction. The intent is to bring a multi-jurisdictional, multidisciplined team of people into an investigation at the onset and allow these people to bring their expertise and focus from various angles in the investigation.
In an effort to ensure that all local agencies get the resources they need during a missing person investigation, the FBI has established a protocol where the missing person is put into the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children's database, that the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children then notify the FBI's 24-hour command center, SIOC, Strategic Information Operations Center. Once SIOC receives that information, they forward it to the field office where the missing person is located, and then they forward it to the Behavioral Analysis Unit.
The California Law Enforcement Telecommunications System, or CLETS, is available to local law enforcement agencies in California 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. This affords them an opportunity to enter reports of missing persons or critical missing children into the system immediately, and to make that information available to all local law enforcement agencies in California, to the Department of Justice, and to local agencies in other states through the NCIC.
After the success stories involving Critical Reach started to circulate, San Jose PD took things a step further, and they organized their volunteer organizations so that they would know what to do in case of an emergency. Each member of the volunteer organization would have a specific route, a place where he would go and distribute the flyers when San Jose PD notified them. A young boy, 3 years old, in a laundromat with his mother, wandered away and was kidnapped by a pervert. He took him into a car, kept him in basically the same area, but San Jose PD quickly realized they had a stranger abduction. They called for their volunteers, they created the flyers, and like a well-organized army, they were distributed all across San Jose very quickly. That evening, a waitress in a taqueria went out to dump the garbage, which was her usual routine, and at that time of night, typically that parking lot was empty. This night, there was a car there, so she paid a little more attention, recognized the boy from the flyer in the window, came back in and called San Jose PD. In the interview with the suspect, he told them that he planned to keep the boy alive for a few more days to continue to molest him, but fully intended to kill him.
There has never, ever in the history of this earth been anyone who has ever been cured of molesting children. It's not a sickness, it's not an illness, it's not a disease. It is obsessive behavior to exercise your power, will, and control over someone who is helpless. It is subtle, it's secretive, and it's successful. And it ruins children for the rest of their lives.
Investigations involving missing persons need the help of additional eyes and ears to help find the missing person. Using the talents and knowledge of your fellow law enforcement professionals is a tool and resource that every officer can and should utilize during all phases of an investigation, particularly in missing person cases. The media can also be a great benefit during missing persons investigations. The tools and resources that are available to law enforcement on the local, state, and national level can make the search for a missing person more defined and successful.
We're looking for James Murphy. Goes by the name of Jimmy. He's a 5-year-old male, approximately 3 feet 5 inches tall, 48 pounds. Brown hair, brown eyes, fair complexion. Last seen in the campsite at
Good evening, folks. I'm Steve Hill from the Sheriff's Department. I'll be a media spokesman on this event. We're looking for 5-year-old little Jimmy Murphy. He was here picnicking with his family. About 3 hours ago, he wandered off.
Team 4, Team 3 reports the subject is west.
Bridge, that team's been assembled ready for briefing.
Be right with you. Let's put a team into this area and this area. I'll be right back.
Okay, let's go over the investigative team lead status. Doug, Amber Alert status.
Regional Amber Alerts have been activated.
Good. Jan, FBI team status.
The evidence response team has started processing the lower quadrant. That should be done in about an hour.
Mike, status of the rural residence canvas team and 290 team.
Both in progress. Estimated time of completion 2 hours.
Okay, we're good to go.
Keep up your hope. It's going to be okay. They'll find it. It'll be okay.
In the case of an incident command scenario, all of your resources are going to be brought to at least a central location for a short time to receive instructions, to find out which agencies those are, what their capabilities are, what their abilities are. And from there, we would have a centralized command center. People would be able to get instructions and information from one centralized authority and make for a much more coordinated search effort.
We have ways to suggest that you might set up your command posts. A recent case that we saw where a command post was set up in between where the child was taken and where the child's body was ultimately found. And it was teeming with people, so that when there were dogs that were brought to the place, they were confused and they didn't lead to where the child's body would have been recovered. So, those are all types of things to take into consideration. That's why we urge folks that as soon as something happens, give us a call. We can identify the resources for you. We can identify investigative strategies for you and where you might find some additional help.
Well, the smaller agencies, people who might not have enough personnel or resources to conduct a search, they're going to need to request that those resources from someone else, from some other department. If you're a smaller policing agency, maybe call your sheriff's department. Everybody has mutual aid agreements, and there's always contacting, depending on what kind of a case it is. You can contact the FBI or Office of Emergency Services or the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. There are resources that you can use that are outside of your agency and maybe outside of your county that are something that you should use, because you're going to need to do a thorough search to protect yourself and your department. And these resources are available, and you should use them whenever possible.
Agencies facing a missing person situation should exercise the mutual aid system. The mutual aid system is designed to assist them, and agencies working together to help overcome these types of situations have a better chance of being successful than if they were going about it on their own. The standard of care has been set in California for investigation and as well for search missions when dealing with missing person cases. Agencies are encouraged to use this system.
The lead investigator can draw on many of the resources of the FBI, including personnel for various reasons, whether it be for interviews, neighborhood canvassing, for surveillances, whatever they need. We also provide technical assistance ranging from anywhere from using pen register trap and trace, cell site information, poll cameras, also evidence response teams, the computer analysis response team, whatever resources that the investigator needs, the Federal Bureau of Investigation can assist them in an investigation.
We have found some incredible ways that dogs can, using month-old scent, can still track and still find a child doing that. So, we can identify some of those resources that are available, where you can locate those resources, whether it be a cadaver dog or whether it be a bloodhound or anything else.
Oftentimes, agencies do not realize that exercising and utilizing the mutual aid system is voluntary. What that means is there's no cost to the agency receiving assistance under the mutual aid system. The agencies needing the assistance are asked to take care of the responding personnel as far as lodging and feeding, what have you, but the actual cost for the resource is free. That's the beauty of the mutual aid system. It's neighbor helping neighbor in time of need.
When the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children was created, Congress had the foresight to create us as a private nonprofit organization. What that means is that we can work with corporate America and use their technology, use all of the resources that they have available that they donate to us. This is incredibly accurate when it comes to the distribution of photographs. It's incredibly accurate when it comes to the management of data and of information, and our ability to do researches and resources into the billions and billions of records that are around. When we have our case analysis and support division, we use places like CDView Infotech, AutoTrack, American Student List, LexisNexis, ChoicePoint, First Data. Billions and billions of records. If you ever gotten a credit card, a house, a car, if you ever filled out a warranty card, a registration, or gotten a Domino's pizza, you're on a database, and we can access those databases immediately. That means all you as a police officer have to do is make one call. We have 11 federal officers assigned to the National Center: FBI, Secret Service, U.S. Customs and Inspection, U.S. Marshals, Postal Inspection Service. All of these resources available through one phone call. Being able to tie all these resources together has allowed us to increase our closure rate from in the 70s percentage to now in the 90s percentage over the last 10 years.
Resources available under the mutual aid system for a missing person case could include consultants, trained search managers that have experience and training within the arena of voluntary missing, involuntary missing, and abduction cases, as well as wilderness or urban search environments. That's one type of resource that's available. Trained search and rescue teams. Personnel, teams that are trained to enter an area and search for clues and search for the subject. Search dogs. horses, vehicles, aircraft, communications equipment. Anything that may be out there in the law enforcement or search and rescue arena is technically available under the mutual aid system.
Quite frequently, the media will play an important and significant role in helping to bring this case to a resolution. They also can sometimes drive the way these investigations take place.
When the media is involved, you want to give them enough information so that it makes it an interesting story for them. But you don't want to provide too much information, because you have to remember, being a missing person is not against the law. You have to worry about their privacy, and the privacy issues, you have to weigh those with the information that does need to go out to the press. So you give them enough information to pique their interest so that they can put a photograph out and let the public know that a missing person is out there and we need to find them.
Anytime an agency is faced with a missing person case that may be high profile or it may have attracted media attention, convergent volunteers are going to begin arriving on scene and wanting to help out. Agencies have the option of whether they're going to utilize these volunteer groups or not. It is our recommendation that agencies grab a hold of these groups and at least coordinate some of their effort to where it's put to the best use to help locate the individual, and as well make sure that they're not making the investigation itself even more complicated or more of a mess than it already is by having people just running everywhere.
Careful consideration should be made in regard to clearing a missing persons investigation. An investigating officer should not close a case simply because there's been no recent forward movement in the investigation. Obvious closure is appropriate when the missing person is confirmed or returned or evidence has matched an unidentified body. Consider that once a case is closed, all evidence can be lost, and the potential for identifying the missing person is lost along with it.
In a missing persons investigation, if the person hasn't been located within 30 days, it's the responsibility of the follow-up investigator to not only recontact the reporting party to see if there's any additional information available, but also to recontact any other agencies that you may have been in contact with previously. At that time, with regard to the reporting party, the investigator should attempt to obtain not only dental charts, but dental x-rays, and prepare to send these to the Department of Justice as required by law.
By using experts such as pathologists, fingerprint experts, odontologists, anthropologists, we can develop the most complete picture about the decedent in order to develop a record that we can compare against missing persons.
Very often in missing persons cases, we will have a person that has returned home voluntarily, whether it be a chronic runaway or otherwise, and the reporting party will fail to call us and notify us. That's why it's very important for the investigators to continue their regular follow-up with the families to determine whether there are any new additional leads, or if the fact that the person has come home, that we can clear that case and redirect those resources towards other cases that we may be following up on at that time.
In my belief, a case should never be closed just because there's no further information or there are no further leads. Obviously, once a person has been located or there has been information which indicates that the person has been positively identified alive or dead, then it's important that the information be removed from the system because NCIC and DOJ guidelines require that all information be accurate at that time. The future of missing persons cases probably is going to revolve around the emerging technology. GPS is becoming more and more important in investigations. Satellite technology has also been used in a number of them. It's hard to predict just what technology will be available even tomorrow, much less 5 years from now. But none of this is ever going to replace the police work done by not only the initial responding officer, but also by the follow-up investigator. If he doesn't treat it seriously and do his job correctly, all the technology in the world probably isn't going to find that person.
As investigators, we need to remember the importance of developing relationships not only with our local agencies, but also the state agencies within the state of California, the Officer of Emergency Services, and also the federal agencies available to us. The National Clearinghouse, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, acts as a liaison for law enforcement nationwide with all the federal agencies and the resources they have available. Understanding that with these relationships that we have working together, our ultimate goal is the safe recovery of either the child or the person that's missing and getting them home safely.
25 years ago when the National Center was created, the greatest threat to our kids was the parks and recreation areas. 10 years ago it was the arcades. Today it's Cyberville. Today it's that place in space that has the online services, the World Wide Web, the Internet, the private bulletin board. It's a place where anyone with malintent has instant access to 25 million potential victims. You don't even need to be that good a child molester. You get up to bat so many times, sooner or later you're going to get a hit. To do that, we do is we train officers in protecting children online. We have regional courses given throughout the United States for investigators. We have a week-long course for prosecutors where we bring them to the National Center and we talk about the specific laws that govern the Cyberville and the ways in which they can work with all the other jurisdictions in order to bring some of these people to justice. We have a course that was developed about 5 years ago where we ask the chiefs and sheriffs to come back with their school superintendents so that we can assist those jurisdictions with their school resource officers and giving their school resource officer leadership capabilities. We have them come back as a community where we'll take the mayor or the judge, the prosecutor, or the social service person to come up with plans, with memorandum of understanding, with all types of ways in which they can work better and more efficiently together to protect children. We bring these programs out to the communities. We have them regionally throughout the United States. I like to say we're very rigid about our flexibility, but we need to be responsive to the people we serve. This is what our job is. And so that we don't want to put up barriers and we don't want to put up ways that are impediments to these men and women getting the training.
The goal of this telecourse is to give you the basic knowledge and guidance to appropriately respond to the challenge of a missing persons investigation. On behalf of the California Commission on Peace Officer Standards and Training, we thank you so much for your time.